This is Brazos Valley Vets, an archive visit with a military veteran from the Brazos Valley. Now, here's your host, Tom Turbyville.
Brazos Valley Voices is very proud of its relationship with the Brazos Valley Veterans Memorial. It's tucked away in College Station's Veterans Park and Athletic Complex at 3101 Harvey Road. It's a hidden gem for sure, a 12-acre site dedicated to veterans from our nation's major wars. The Brazos Valley Veterans Memorial includes life-size statues, a wall of honor, interpretive panels, and memorial sites. It was chartered in 2000 as a nonprofit corporation. The Brazos Valley Veterans Memorial is supported by generous community residents, organizations, and partners, including Brazos County and the municipalities of Bryan and College Station. The Brazos Valley Veterans Memorial's all-volunteer board of directors proudly contributes their time and resources to salute our veterans. Their mission is to proactively pay tribute to veterans through an educational venue where future generations can learn that freedom comes with a heavy price. Former President George H.W. Bush helped dedicate the Brazos Valley Veterans Memorial on November the 10th, 2002. Bush said at the time, "The Brazos Valley community can stand proud. The names that mark the memorial showcase the sons and daughters who gave dedicated service to our nation so that future generations can share the freedoms we enjoy. Their task was great, their sacrifice even greater, but their legacy stands firm, and their memories burn bright." Bush later said the Brazos Valley Veterans Memorial is a similar quality to those at the famed mall in Washington, D.C. Within the Lewis L. Adam Memorial Plaza sits the 250-ton red granite Wall of Honor, which serves as the memorial's focal point. The wall bears the etched names of more than 5,000 veterans representing all periods of U.S. history who are family and friends of Brazos Valley residents. Notable names include 24 presidents and former Texas A&M University students who received the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military award. The bronze sculpture mounted at the top of the wall depicts a GI carrying a fellow soldier to safety. The statue is the work of artist Robert Eccleston of Schuyler Falls, New York. Do you have a beloved veteran that you would like to add to the Wall of Honor? The veteran may be living, deceased, or active, and does not have to be a Brazos Valley resident. The cost is $150 per name, and the application deadline each year is August the 15th. New additions are recognized at the annual Veterans Day ceremony. Names received after August 15th will be recognized the following year. For more information on adding your loved ones or your name to the Brazos Valley Veterans Memorial Wall of Honor, contact the BVVM at 979-696-6247 or email them info@bvvm.org. Or you can go to their fantastic website. It's easy, bvvm.org. Howdy, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the podcast and another visit with a great veteran of the Brazos Valley. And today we're going to visit with John Happ, U.S. Air Force Vietnam Texas A&M class of 1967. This conversation with John in his home happened on January the 24th, 2008. John Happ is a flyer with more than 40 combat missions in Vietnam. He loves to fly, loves to talk about where he's been, like his some 29 landings on the icy runways in Antarctica. John Happ is a former city councilman in College Station and the former manager of Texas A&M's Easterwood Airport and Vietnam veteran, and also a fellow member of the College Station Noon Lions Club. Along with me, John Happ, a good friend. Enjoy this visit with John Happ here on Brazos Valley Voices. Tell me about, the internet is a wonderful thing, so I can look up people and find out things that I didn't know. And I found out that you were born in Austin, right?
That's
but
true.
You were raised in Ohio, is that right?
Yes, sir. Graduated from Medina High School in 1963.
Yeah.
I've kind of thought about how should I start this? And maybe
Yeah.
that's the best place to start. I graduated, and then that summer I pitched a lot, and I pitched for a small farm team up in northern Ohio, and thought maybe I'd try to play ball at A&M,
Mm-hmm.
but I weighed 127 pounds when I got out of high school, so I didn't have a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And when I finished the program, I got selected for fish camp, so I came down here for fish camp. And arrived here with 2 foot lockers, and they dropped me off at Eastgate.
I'll be darned.
And Sunday between semesters, and I mean, it was, back then, there was nothing.
Yeah.
Highway 6 wasn't even there, really.
Right.
And I carried 1 foot locker 100 yards, and went back, got the other one, and carried it 100 yards past that one. It took me about 2 hours to get, it was August, it must have been 100 degrees.
What was it, 59, 58?
No, 63.
63, okay.
And
That's when you came here, 63, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah.
And finally, had both of them up in front of the administration building, sitting there not knowing what am I going to do. I know cars ever came by, nothing. I mean, it was dead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here come KK in a Cushman scooter, one of those covered scooter things that they used to have. He pulled up the curb and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I've got to go to fish camp." And he said, "There's nobody here. This place is shut down. There's no rooms or anything available." And I said, "Well, I don't. I've got to find a place to stay till tomorrow, because that's when I got to go to fish camp." And he said, "Well, let me see if I can find you a place to get in." And I said, "What about my foot locker?" He said, "Well, there's anybody here to steal them." So we went to the hospital, and I spent my first night at A&M in the basement of the hospital.
Of the A&M hospital?
The old hospital.
The old one, yeah.
Yeah, the one they tore down. And I guess my Air Force career started after got back from fish camp, and we had to go register.
Mm-hmm.
And I stood in line like we used to have to stand in line and fight for classes.
Right.
I got to the end, and obviously a co-ed, or not a co-ed, but a married student, she was there at the last table, and she took my cards and everything, and she said, "Oh, do you want Air Force ROTC or Army ROTC?" And I said, "What's ROTC?" She said, "Reserve Officer Training Card." And I said, "Do I have to?" And she says, "Yeah, you have to." And the guy behind me says, "Well, I heard in the Army you got to carry a rifle, and in the Air Force you don't." I said, "I want the Air Force." That's how I got in the Air Force. And ended up, I was Dr. Adamson. I swam for the Austin Aquatic Club before we moved to Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And Doc Adamson, I was going to swim. I was going to try out for the swimming team.
Mm-hmm.
And went to swimming practice for about 2 weeks, and then at Chow one night they announced that the fish drill team was having tryouts, and this year they're going to travel to, and they listed wherever they were traveling, Cherry Blossom and Arizona, and they were going to go to Indiana. And I thought, well, geez, that's close, because there was no way I had any money to go home
Mm-hmm.
for Christmas or anything. So I thought, well, that might be a free trip to see my folks.
Yeah.
At least to Indiana, they can drive over from Indiana. So
Right.
I tried out for the fish drill team, and I guess it was, I made the first, I guess there were probably 250 kids tried out for the fish drill team when I tried out. And, bless his life, Bob Medina, was a sophomore in Squadron 10, was one of the, well, he was on the year before, so he was a sophomore, pisshead. And he knocked on my door, and I opened my door to my room, and he said, "You fish Happ?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Do you know who I am?" "No, sir." "Then whip out, damn it." So I whipped out, and he was 6'4", and I'm amazed he didn't play football, because he was a big guy.
Mm-hmm.
And Medina says, "You're not going to make the fish drill team." I said, "Okay." I'd seen him out there. I knew who he was, but I didn't tell him that.
Yeah.
And he said, "Unless you learn how to march." He said, "You march like you got a corn cob you know where." And, and he spent, I guess 15 or 20 minutes with me in my room, and really gave me some help. He said, I want you to square every corner. I want you to march to class, and I want you to pop every pivot. And he showed me how to pop a pivot and showed me how to do an about face. And I was falling all over myself trying to do a rear march. And, he did a really good job, and so I made the fish drill team, and so I didn't go out for sports. Plus, like I said, weighed 127 pounds. And when I went to get my commission, when I was a junior, I had to go for my physical. And I went to the same hospital I spent the first night in. Went up there, and the nurse put me on the scale, and she said, "You're underweight. You weigh 122 pounds. You got to weigh 129." So I'd lost 5 pounds. So I want you to go back to the chow hall, and I want you to eat all the dry cereal you can find, because it was like right after breakfast. So I went back over to the chow hall, and all the common churls were cleaning the tables, and I was grabbing Post Toasties, anything I could find, and said, eat all the bananas you can eat, all those dry cereal you can eat, and then come back. So I ate about 4 boxes of Post Toasties and 3 or 4 bananas. Yeah. So I went back over there, and she handed me a glass, and she said, now go over that water fountain and drink that water until it gets warm. And I know I drank at least 10 glasses of water. I was so bloated and but I weighed 129 and a half pounds. So she got me my commission.
So you gained 7.5 pounds that day, right?
And then the next thing that happened was my junior year, I switched from aero to entomology. And when it came time to graduate, I wasn't on the graduation list. And I went, geez, I went running, and I don't know if you remember Dr. Potts. He was the head of the agriculture.
Sure, I know who he is, yeah.
And so I waited out in his office for 2 hours, waiting out there to see him. Finally went in to see him, and Dr. Potts says, what's the problem, John? And I said, sir, I'm not on the graduation list. And he called the secretary, and she pulled my records, and he looked at them, and he said, well, you're 2 hours short. And I said, what do you mean I'm 2 hours short? I got 170 some hours. And he said, yeah, but you're 2 hours short in entomology. And I said, I can't stay here another semester. I'll lose my commission, and I've got a slot for pilot training. And he said, you got more math than the whole entomology department does total. And I said, yeah, I know. None of it counted towards entomology. And he said, I tell you what, I'll do this. I'll transfer your mechanical drawing for a poultry science class, and you can graduate if you promise me one thing. I mean, I'd do anything.
Yeah.
He said, you got to promise me you'll never crop dust. He'd asked me why I wanted to graduate, and I told him I want to go to fly. That's what I really wanted to do. I got my license through FIP there at Easterwood, and learned to fly there. And back up just a little bit, my senior year when I was flying, Carol had flown down for the military ball, and we had talked about getting married, and she, I said, well, when I can afford to buy an engagement ring, I'll buy you an engagement ring. And so I said, what kind of ring do you like? She said, orange blossom. So one Saturday before she got there, I had gone down to Bryan, and Caldwell Jewelers, Miss Caldwell's the only one that had orange blossom. And so when she arrived that Saturday, I took her down there, and I said, you can show me which one you like. And of course, Miss Caldwell was in there, and she tried on every ring in there. And then she was applying for a teaching job at Snook, because she was graduating a semester early. And we started to leave. Miss Caldwell says, well, take them with you, take them with you. And had 5 rings there. She couldn't decide which one she liked. So we got out in the car, and I locked them in a glove compartment, and we drove to Snook, and then we drove straight back to her place. And I never had so much money in one place at any one time. And so I said, you wait here in the car, I'm going to take them in, and I'll tell her, when I can afford it, I'll get one. So Miss Caldwell wasn't there. I started signing this receipts, getting it back. Thank goodness, got them all turned in and started to leave. Miss Caldwell came through the front door. She said, "John, did Carol pick one out?" I said, "Well, yeah, obviously. She wants the most expensive one, you know." So I figured that's the one she wanted. And she said, "Well, did you take it?" And I said, "Miss Caldwell, I can't afford this. I'm making $50 a month and I'm working out at the entomology lab. I've still got another semester of school to go. I just can't afford it." She says, "Well, you pay me what you can when you can.
Nice.
But I want you to take that ring."
Right.
So I took the ring, put it in my pocket, and then I had to fly that afternoon. So we went out to the old Texas Aeromotive, which was in the old hangar that's out there, 756. And I told Carol, "You had to come inside. It's too hot out here. So wait for me inside. There's a couch and you can read or what have you. I'll just be an hour."
Mm-hmm.
And started out the door. And I stopped and I turned and reached in my pocket and I said, "Here, you better hold this because I might crash and burn."
Oh.
Not smart. Not too romantic.
Yeah.
She was not a happy camper. So that's how she and I got engaged. And I guess that's why Easterwood's been so special to me.
Right. Yeah,
Because,
sure.
It meant so much to me, learning to fly there and then getting engaged there. But,
Yeah.
anyways, I finally got Dr. Potts to let me graduate, and Pat Gamble, who retired as a 4-star, was in my outfit.
Mm-hmm.
And PK called me right before I graduated and said, "Where are you going to pilot training?" I said, "I'm going to Willie." And he said, "Why don't you go to Randolph?" And I said, "They don't have pilot training at Randolph." And he said, "Yeah, they're going to start it up." And I said, "No, Willie's the premier flight training base. You know, I want to go out to Arizona and go to Willie." And he said, "Well, Willie, washout rate's about 20%, but because my dad says," which his dad was a 1-star, "my dad says that the washout rate at Randolph will be about 10% because it's a new school and they want to make it show that it's progressing." I said, "Where do I sign up?" So he said, "Well, you got to go to Trigon and tell them you want to change your base look, because back then you got your choice of pilot training bases. That's about the only thing you got from, I was, what they call it, DG at summer camp, but it didn't mean anything at A&M.
Mm-hmm.
But being DG and of course A&M usually fought to get you your desired base.
Yeah.
So I went up to Trigon and said, "I want to change my class to go to Randolph," and they said, "Well, we can't get you the same date, but we'll let you know what date we can get you, but we'll change you to Randolph."
Yeah.
So I went home. We got married at Christmas, and that was the other reason I told Dr. Potts I had to graduate. I just got married, and I need to graduate. I can't afford to come back another semester for 2 hours.
Right.
And so I got home, and I didn't have a job. What was I going to do? And Carol was teaching. She got a job in Medina.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to find a place to live and ended up living in the game warden's cabin out in the country because we couldn't find anybody that wouldn't take anything less. Because I didn't know when I was going to pilot training.
Right.
And didn't want to sign a 6-month or a year lease on an apartment.
Sure.
Didn't want to live with my folks or her folks.
Right.
So we rented this one room cabin. Actually 2. I had a bathroom, but it was an all open kitchen. Everything was open and no heat. Just a Benjamin stove, firewood. I learned to build fires, boy. Let me tell you.
Oh man. Okay.
Learned to build them fast. But I guess I'd been home about a week, and Carol says, "Well, why don't you substitute?" Because back then it was so tough getting teachers.
Right.
So I said, "Okay." I went and signed up, and boy, the next morning they called me.
Yeah.
Go substitute. And I did that for about 2 weeks, and I'll never forget, man, it's left such an impression. I was teaching a 9th grade geography class. I get a call from the principal, walks down there and says, "Dr. Smith, the superintendent for the counties, wants to talk to you." And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm really in trouble. And I said, okay, I'll go by there after school. And he said, no, he wants you to come right now. But man, I really am in trouble. So I drove back into town and because I was out in the county and went up to scared to death. I just knew I was in deep, deep trouble. And Dr. Smith says, John, and I'd sprayed his fruit trees when I was in high school. We started a pest control business, and I sprayed his fruit trees, so I knew Dr. Smith, and he said, I need you to take over a class. No, Dr. White, Mr. Smith, he said, Mr. Smith passed away, and he's an industrial arts teacher. And my dad would never ever let me touch a power tool. I mean, we built houses and done a lot of things, but he would never let me use power tools. He said, if you cut your fingers off, your baseball career is gone, and so. Anyways, I said, okay. So that's a whole nother story, but I ended up teaching industrial arts for a semester, and probably one of the most rewarding experiences. I taught in a Black River High School, which is right on the border of Ashland County. And I actually had 3 students that were older than I was. They'd come out of the Amish, the Ashland County is all Amish. You see horse and buggies and everything. And they all 3 spoke very broken English. They ought to speak German in their schools. But boy, were they good with their hands. Of course, they didn't use any power tools until, that's why I was supposed to teach them.
Yeah.
So every night after school, my dad would come up there and would show me how to use all the tools. I mean, I actually got an education by giving an education to the kids. But then I got a call that I needed to be at Randolph on May 28th, or May 18th. So I actually left school 2 weeks early and came down to pilot training at Randolph. And
It's been 67?
68, May of 68.
Okay.
And then graduated in June of 69, and one of my, I don't mean to get sidetracked here, but Marcus Hurley was a senior when I was a freshman, and one night coming back from fish drill team, I was walking back to the dorm and I was bouncing M1 on his muzzle, walking up the quad, and I hear this, freshman! Oh, jeez, and I popped to, and it was about 7:45 after CQ had already started, and he says, get your ass up here right now. So I looked up, it was the 2nd floor of dorm 10, and I didn't know any better. I know now I should have never gone in there, but I went up there and bang, 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 and he opened the doors. Don't you know it's called quarters? Yes, sir. You know who I am? No, sir. You better find out. So I whipped out. I knew who he was, but I didn't tell him that. And he said, that's a weapon, that's not a toy, and you need to treat it with respect. Now give me a pink stool. Well, I'd been drilling all afternoon. It didn't take me long to crap out. And then he made me do a bunch of push-ups, and then he said, I better not ever catch you treating that weapon with disrespect like you did tonight. Yes, sir. So I left. Well, I stayed clear of that guy. I didn't want to, when we block him for tables, if I was going to be at his table, I wouldn't eat. I'd leave. I didn't want anything to do with it. Well, he was walking from dorm 12, where the laundry was, up to dorm when I was a sophomore and he was a senior. And he was carrying his laundry, 2 bags of laundry and his books. And he always wore his hat right on the tip of his nose. I was sitting there, saw him come out of the dorm, went out in the hall, freshman, 4 freshmen, bang, bang, bang. I said, it's not my privilege. He's a senior, but y'all know who Mr. Hurley is. Yes, sir. I said, well, I think his laundry needs to get hung. Yes, sir. So I said, if he catches you, who are you going to tell him told you to do it? Mr. Santa Claus, sir. I said, oh, good bull. So I locked my door and I went upstairs to my little brother's room. He was a freshman in Spartan 6, and went up to his room and peeked through the blind and watched him. 4 of them hit him from 4 different directions just before he got to the dorm, and spun him around and ripped his laundry open and hung it in the trees. And he's standing there looking around. He knew somebody was watching. He was looking around trying to see if he could figure out who was watching. And finally he takes his hat off and he throws his head on the ground and just stands there. So I eased lying back down and never saw him again until we marched from T-37s down to T-38s. I walked into the T-38 flight room. Guess who's one of the T-38 instructors? So I went home that night and told my wife, I said, there's no way that I'm going to graduate in pilot training. She said, why? So I told her the story, and she goes, why would you do something that stupid? I said, well, back then it was good bull, but now. Well, Marcus never said a word to me, and guys would ask me, weren't you at A&M at the same time Marcus was? Yeah, but he was an upperclassman, and I didn't know him that well. And never said a word to me until, I guess it was, I graduated in June. It must have been first week or so of April. The TAC officer called me in and said, John, I've been looking at your records, and your dad's an editor to a magazine, and your mother's a society editor, and your class hadn't put out a yearbook, and y'all need to put out a yearbook. Well, I'd never taken a picture in my life. My brother did, and spent a lot of time in a dark room with my, just a second.
Go ahead.
Hey, let me call you back. Okay. So, I worked my tail off. Boy, I mean, Carol and I and one of the other guys, they finished me early, about a month early, because I was trying to get, and I was going back and recreating some of the things that we had done to get pictures to put in the yearbook. I mean, in our yearbook. And so he walked in the flight room. They had come back, and I walked in the flight room to give them their books, and there's a note on the wall that says, Lieutenant Happ to fly at 2:30 that day, and I hadn't been in the flight room in a month.
Yeah.
And I was going to show you the note. I don't know what I did with it. And he walked in there, and I turned in everything except for my helmet and my and my boots were at home, and I borrowed a flight suit, and I still had my helmet but no G suit. And I walked in right about 2:35, and Marcus said, "Where you been?" He said, "We got to go fly." And I said, "Why? I thought I was finished." She said, "Nope, you need 210 hours, and you got 209.2. You need 8/10 of an hour." And I said, "What am I going to do for 8/10 of an hour?" He says, "You're going to clear for me. I'm going to go out and fly proficiency. You don't, you're already finished, but we need to get your time up." See, so we rode out, didn't say a word, rode out the airplane. He said, "Just get in, strap in, I'll do the pre-flight and everything." And I was in the front and he was in the back, and I taxied him out and lined him up on the runway, and he pulled a bag over the back and was going to do an ITO, an instrument takeoff, and he said, "Keep me centered on the center line, and if I start to venture off," because you take off on the ILS and you use the needle to take you centered off down the runway. So he was really under the bag, he couldn't see anything. Took off, climbed up to 30-some thousand feet, and he was doing steep turns and whiffer deals and, instrument work. And first time ever, I got to look around. Man, I could see San Antonio, obviously. I could see Austin, I could see Houston. Man, this is incredible. I never looked around before. I was too busy flying, looking at instruments and looking at other airplanes when we were in formation. And all of a sudden, subconsciously, I hear him make a radio call wanting the lower area, and he wanted the one below us, and they said no, that it was occupied. And he said, "Well, call me when it's available." So I'm just up there just enjoying the heck out of the view, and then the controller calls and says, "Rando 44, you're cleared into Area 5." And he said, "Roger." And he rotated that sucker upside down and sucked about 7 or 8 G's, and I had no G suit on. Man, I went down in that seat, and my helmet, I started graying out. Then he whips it into 90 degrees of bank, pulling about 6 G's in that turn. And he goes, "It'll teach you to hang my laundry." Well, it was I green, and when we got through, we got back in the bus, and he had a big catty grin on his face. I said, how did you find out? And he said, well, Fish Bird was one of the 4 that hung his laundry. And he said, I was at a football game this fall, and I ran into Senior Bird. And he told me that it was you that hung my laundry. And so that the next, 2 days later we graduated, and that night at graduation, he came up and, I think that's the airport. Let me see. John Happ. Yeah. Reading the paper about. I was waiting to go to PIT, pilot instructor program there at Randolph, and all of a sudden I got called in. And I said, John, we got bad news. They're going to close Randolph, and so we're cutting back on our instructors. So the best we can do is get you a 130. He said, we can get you a buff or a 135 tanker or a 130, and it's at least intact. So I said, yeah, I'll take the 130. So that's how I ended up with a 130. And went through Seward, and went from there to Forbes, and I was at Forbes for about 8 months. And the TAC personnel guy came around and talked to all the lieutenants. We had about 52 second lieutenants showed up almost at the same time. And there wasn't anything between a second lieutenant and a bunch of old majors and lieutenant colonels, because everybody else was in Vietnam. And most of these lieutenant colonels couldn't fly worth a damn. They came out of Gooney Birds or something, hadn't flown in years, but they were retraining them back because we were so short pilots for Vietnam. And Major Cox, I'll never forget. But I was scheduler for the squadron, so I didn't go to his meeting. And he came walking into the flight scheduling room and introduced himself, and he said, Lieutenant, you weren't at the meeting today. And I said, yeah, I got a garden plot. I'm trying to get crews to go fly this garden plot. And he said, well, grab a cup of coffee and let's talk. So he said, are you happy? And I said, no. I said, I wanted to fly fighters. And he said, well, let me see what I can do. So, I don't know, month or 6 weeks went by, and I get a phone call from Major Cox and said, I can't get you a fighter, but I can get you an OV-10. And I said, I'll take it. He said, well, but you got to volunteer for Palace Cobra or Palace Chase to go to Vietnam. So I said, don't worry about it. I'll go over and volunteer right now. So I went over and put my volunteer papers in. Showed up at Hurlburt Field to start OV-10 training, and there was a package there for me from Cox, and said, I got bad news for you, that you lost your OV-10 to an 06. So which C-130 base do you want to go to? And I go, what? Yeah, you're going to have to go to Vietnam on the C-130. So I went back to the squadron and talked to the ops officer, Colonel Perico. He said, John, go to CCK. He said, it's really a great tour. You spend 15 months in country, and then you're out for 2 or 3 days back in Taiwan. So I did, and showed up there had about 900 hours, and it's supposed to have 1,000 to upgrade. And they sent me in country, and because I was a high-time co-pilot, I flew that 15 days with brand new AC. Just gotten his upgrade. They want an experienced co-pilot with a brand new AC. And the second day we flew, we went into Quezon, and man, did I get a rude awakening. Then after we got finished with that 15 days, they put me right into AC upgrade. I didn't even have but 925 hours, but they were so short. Aircraft commanders.
Hello. Is who? Hey, Andrew. Yeah, I do. I'll bring it tonight like I did last week. Is that okay? Okay. Yeah, I've got it. All right.
I went back in country. My first trip as an aircraft commander back in country was because I was a new AC. They normally put you just on trash haul missions, hauling people and freight. You don't do any tactical work. But when I went through to get my check ride, the guy who gave me my check ride used to be at Forbes. He was a standing val at Forbes that got orders and went to CCK Major. And he said, John, we've got scheduled to fly a tack ride this morning, and I'm going to let you fly the left seat. They wanted me to fly the left seat for the tack ride, but since you flew so much tack at Forbes as a co-pilot, I know you haven't flown any in your ACO grade program, but if you can hack it, I'm going to go ahead and tack qualify you. So I said, okay. It's probably the closest I ever came in my career crashing a 130. I got into CDS is a container delivery system, and you put the flaps down and literally hang on the props because the load has to centrifugally fall out of the airplane container delivery. There's not an extraction for that. And so you set the airplane at a real steep angle, and I was flying real good, but the wind was coming from the left and blowing that prop wash over, and I got in that prop wash. Man, I tell you what, I fought, and I could feel the sweat break out on my forehead. I was fighting it like crazy, and when you get in that prop wash, you're almost at the mercy of that prop wash. And so, man, I was white as a sheet. When I recovered and didn't make the drop. I called a no drop and slid out as far as I could to get out of the prop wash, and then climbed back up and got above it. And my heart was beating in my throat so hard I could hardly talk. And we got down and debriefed, and the major laughed. He said, I couldn't think of a better time for that to happen, John. You'll never ever do that again. I said, boy, you're not kidding. And then we talked a few minutes about position and formation, because what he said was I should have, because the wind was crabbing, I was trying to keep my position here, but I should have moved it over here, knowing that his prop wash was going to blow across in front of me. But see, I never had any of that instruction and didn't know that. But we went and did assault landings. I didn't have any problem with assault landings. You just crash it on the runway is all you do.
Right.
So, well, then I flew, I don't know, I guess another 3 or 4 months. I had 3 or 4 shuttles in country. And every mission
Still in C-130s?
Yeah. Every mission is a combat mission. And then I get a call one day to go for an interview with Major Takeda, and the colonel. I can't remember the colonel's name now, but I went over there and they said, "Would you be interested in flying a classified mission?" And I said, "What's it entails? I can't tell you." And I said, "Is it one mission?" No. When we brief you in, that's all you'll ever fly now is I can't, for the record, talk about it. What I will tell you is I was flying with Air America. And I flew out of Udorn. I flew in Levi's t-shirt, tennis shoes, no dog tags, no wallet, and no markings on the airplane. Someday if you're ever up in my office, happen to see the oil painting there, it's a gray 130, and look for markings. There's not a marking on it. And I had gone in the barrel up to North Vietnam at 50 feet to recover another Air America 130 that lost, and his radio's all shot up, and I went up there and he flew my wing out. He had lost a lot of his instruments, and he flew my wing out, and we were coming back 50 feet over the coast, and he took that picture, and I had it painted.
Wow.
But there's no markings on the airplane whatsoever. All the plates on all the instruments were all removed, and whenever we had a panel over the wheel well and one in the tail, that when we got to our location, the Stars and Stripes came down with the tail number, and then that fake tail number went up down the top. But went all over places that, quote unquote, U.S. was not Cambodia, Laos,
Right.
and none of those missions count combat missions because they were classified.
Right.
So I think I got 57, 58 combat missions
The count.
that count.
Yeah.
But I must have, I don't know, oodles and oodles and oodles of those. And,
Right.
you know, one of the missions one day, they sent me up to do some airdrops up along the Laotian border. And we were kicking out, this particular day we were kicking out uniforms, camouflage uniforms and boots, the jungle boots, the old canvas boots. And we had a Laotian colonel that was telling us where to drop. And we were doing circle racetracks and dropping right alongside the river bank there. And, you know, no parachutes, you just come in as low as you could get safely and slow as you could, and they just kick them out the door. And then good guys would, you know, run out and pick them up. And then all of a sudden he goes, pointing on the other side of the river. We didn't own the other side of the river. And so he was just jumping up and down and speaking Laotian and speaking English. And so I went over and dropped on the other side, got back, and in debriefing, I was telling the intel guys, and they said, you better call 7th Air Force. So I called our contact at 7th Air Force and told him. He started laughing like crazy, and he said, John, he said, the reason they do that is if you drop 10 over here and you don't drop anything on the other side of the river, they're going to attack to get that food or whatever you're dropping. So you give them something on this side and they don't attack on the other side.
I see. Yeah.
I never heard of such a thing, man. That's how screwed up the whole thing was. Then I came back from Vietnam in 72. I was over there about almost 18 months, and because I was flying that special mission. One of the other missions that I had, I had the first 240Z in Taiwan. You could buy a car over there, and most of the guys bought Mitsubishis or something and then sold it when they left.
Right.
Well, I planned to bring mine home, and I think I paid $2,000 for it.
Wow.
And I planned to bring it home. Well, the weekend before I was due to ship my car, which was a week before I was supposed to deroast, I was down at the MAG compound downtown Taichung, and I get one of my buddies walked in and said, Happy, he said, they've been paging you at the club. And I go, oh, Jesus. Major Takeda had asked me would I pull yellow alert. We had 3 alerts. We had a red, yellow, and a green alert. And I was pulling yellow alert. And I forgot all about it, man. So I called him on the phone, and he says, you got exactly 32 minutes to get airborne. And I'm downtown Taichung with no uniform. I'm in shorts and tennis shoes. And so, man, I got in that Z, and the speed limit on Talia Road was 35 miles an hour. I must have been doing 75, trying to put my flight suit on and my boots on. Went wheeling into the base ops there, sped on base, wanted I didn't get run down by the Chinese, and pulled up in front of base ops, said the airplane's sitting out front, the engines are running, sign the ART book and go. So I signed the book, and I ran out there with my boots unlaced, and all I had was my flight suit, my boots, and nothing else. And my co-pilot had put my helmet bag, got it from the squadron, I had my helmet bag, jumped on the airplane, taxied out, and took off with about 2 minutes to spare. And they sent me, that yellow mission supported the SR-71. And I went to a little island just off of the coast of North Korea. Went up 50 feet over water so radar wouldn't attack us. And landed at this austere strip. And there sat that SR-71. And the pilot's still in it. He'd been in it like 18 hours. But the the SR-71, and this is all, you can't use this, everything I'm telling you about this mission.
Mm-hmm.
But the SR-71, at the speeds they travel, that if they lose one engine, the airplane will disintegrate due to the yaw of losing that engine. That's the speed they travel.
Mm-hmm.
So both engines are tied together. So if you pull power back on one, the other one's going to follow it. So they keep them symmetrical. Well, he lost an engine, and then the other one came back with it, and he dead stick that. And I asked him when we finally got him out of the airplane, because he's in a pressure suit, so it takes a pack to get him out, and a ladder to get up there, because I can't reach the bottom of the SR-71 standing there. It's a good 7.5, 8 feet in the air. And got him out, and I said, how far did you have to dead stick it? And he said, probably close to 3,000 miles. So what altitude was he at? Dead stick it for 3,000 miles. He had to be above 90, pushing it really. So we got him out and recovered the film pack, and then we flew him back to Okinawa. And then I had to fly back to bring a new pilot and pick up that crew. And they had repaired the engine. They put a big camouflage tent over the top of it. That was the first thing they did. And I had all their tools and about 40 crew maintenance troops I took up there.
Mm-hmm.
And the pilot that we took up there said, "You guys hang around until I get airborne, because if something happens, I need those maintenance guys." So we sat there waiting for him to take off, and there was a low cloud cover, thank goodness, most of the time we were there, and he took off and punched that sucker straight up through the clouds, and so we started cranking engines. And all of a sudden the co-pilot goes, "Look!" And I looked, and here he comes. And he must have been, I know he was supersonic, but he came across that field at 100 knots, rocking his wings. And then he punched back up through the clouds again. But what a beautiful sight. What a beautiful sight.
Wow.
And so I missed shipping my car, and had to wash underwear every night, because we were up there for 3 or 4 days total. And we'd fly back. That one night we stayed in Okinawa and then flew back up the next day. And I'm washing my underwear out because I had nothing. Finally got to the BX the last day and bought some t-shirts and underwear and washed my flight suit in the shower. And got back home and ended up selling my car in Taiwan because I couldn't get it shipped, so I couldn't bring it home, and ended up selling my car in Taiwan. Thank God, because we bought our first house.
Yeah.
I had enough money from selling that car that I think I sold it for $3,000, paid $2,000 for it.
Yeah.
And, finally got home and got to back to Carol was actually in Dice looking at houses when I got to Seattle. And when I landed at Seattle, they paged me in the terminal, "Captain Happ, please report to the military desk." So I went over to the military desk and they said, "You need to call Randolph and talk to Personnel Center." So I got on the phone and called them. And he said, "Your orders have been changed. You're now going back to Forbes." Oh, jeez, Topeka, Kansas. I did not want to go back to Topeka, Kansas. And my squadron commander, when he heard I was coming back, put in a request for me to come back to Forbes. So I got back. I was there 2 weeks, and they sent me to SOS in residence. So I went to SOS for 3 months and squadron officer school.
Where was that? Was that in?
That was at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. Got home and hadn't flown in 4 months, almost 5 months, and we had moved into a base house and just put our furniture, our household goods, just put them in there because we only been there 2 weeks and they're still in boxes. And we get back there on Christmas Eve.
What year is this now?
This is 1970. It has to be late 72, Christmas of 72.
Okay.
And doorbell rings. And I go to the door and it was we got back the night before Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve morning at 8 o'clock the doorbell rings. And I get out of bed and I stare at the door. And there's this guy standing there with 2 cups of coffee in his pajamas and his t-shirt and house slippers on. And he said, "Are you Captain Happ?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'm Carl Wyrick. I'm the ops officer for the squadron." And he said, "I was looking at your records and you've done scheduling." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I want you to schedule on the road."
Schedule what?
On rotation
Okay.
to Europe. And I said, "Okay, that's fine, I'll do that." So he said, "Oh, I really appreciate it." He drank our coffee and we talked about SOS and what have you. Well, he lived across, caddy corner across the street.
Mm-hmm.
Which he knew when I was home. When I wasn't home, I didn't like that at all. But anyways, that night we were unpacking and my son's 2 years old, and, throwing fits like a 2-year-old would do, getting into everything. And the phone rings. And I went and answered the phone, Captain Happ, and they said, "The bus will be by to pick you up at 9:45 tomorrow morning." I go, "For what?" And they said, "Well, you're going on rotation." And I realized I didn't ask him when they were going on the road. Well, that was the last airplane. That's why I said, "Well, put me on the last airplane." He said, "That is the last airplane. You and Colonel Wyrick. He left this morning. You're leaving tomorrow morning." Boy, was I pissed. It was really hot. But I went over and spent 90 days scheduling. And on the way home, Colonel Wyrick says, "How many hours you got?" Because he and I ended up flying back. And I said, "Oh, I've got about 1,300 hours. I got 400 in Vietnam." And he said, "I'm sending you to instructor school." I said, "Well, you got 1,500 hours to go to instructor school." He said, "You don't want to go?" I said, "Yeah, I want to go, but can I go at 13? He said, "You can go anytime we decide you can go." So I got back, went straight from being overseas for 90 days, now TDY to Little Rock for 60 days, and went through instructor school there. Came back from instructor school, and my wife said, "We ain't living on base. We're going to buy a house."
Mm-hmm.
So we started looking at houses and came so close to buying a house. Ready to sign the papers. And good Lord has been so good to me. But I told her, Carol, I said, I don't feel comfortable about buying that house. Why? And I said, "I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable about buying that house." And the very next morning, they announced Forbes was going to close. And thank God I didn't buy that house, because everybody that owned houses got stuck really bad. They lost a lot of money. So then I was going to go to Little Rock and be an instructor at Little Rock. That was what my order said. And before I left Forbes, I got a call that the DO at Forbes is now the wing commander at Dias. And he got my orders changed. Now en route to Dias. So I finally ended up at Dias. And
So you never went to Little Rock?
I'm sorry.
You never went to Little
I
Rock?
never went to, other than go to officer, I never,
Right. Instructor.
instructor school, I never went back to Little Rock.
Yeah.
And then I got to Dias, and I guess I was there a year, became a flight commander, and then a lot of the older guys now are starting to come back from Vietnam. And the squadron commander called me in and said, they're going to you're probably going to lose your flight because we got 3 majors inbound and you're still a captain and you're going to lose your flight. So I'm going to send you to the command post. And I said, I don't want to go to the command post. I said, is that all you think of me? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, the only guys that go to the command post are phase 5 guys that they're getting out, they're not TAC qualified. He said, no, the DO wants nothing but instructors in there so they can make decisions. And he's asked for you to come up there. And I said, no. I said, to be quite frankly, I want to go to Standing Val. And he said, John, they've been trying to get you in Standing Val for 2 years. He said, but I couldn't afford to let you go. You're the best instructor I got. You flew your ass off. You never complained. He said, I'm about to let you go to Standing Val. I said, well, yeah, but I wanted to go to Standing Val. That was kind of the picking.
Well, where now? Is that where?
Huh?
Standing Val?
Yeah, Standing Val, that's the guy who gives other guys check rides.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's
Okay.
a check section
I got you.
for the
Okay.
wing.
Right.
And they're all a bunch of a-holes up there,
Uh-huh.
But it's a prestige thing, you know, you get selected for Standing Val, you're supposed to be the best pilot in the wing and that
Right.
kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So I was really torqued, and he knew I was really upset. And so the next day, the new DM, the deputy commander for maintenance, called me on the phone and said, what was that?
That's mine.
Oh. How would you like to be a test pilot? Yeah. He said, we're going to get 52 brand new airplanes at DICE. And I've got to have somebody go pick them up, fly the first test mission, fly the first TAC mission with all 52 airplanes. Jeez. So I went back to Little Rock, went through test pilot training, and then I went and picked up, took me almost a year to pick up 52 airplanes, almost one a week, sometimes 2 a week, and then I get a couple of weeks off. But I picked them up at Lockheed, did the test flight, brought them back here, brought them back to DICE, and then flew the first TAC mission with them. And one of the things I started doing was flying with every brand new co-pilot that came into the wing.
Mm-hmm.
And my boss, test pilot section, actually fell under maintenance, was in QC, quality control.
Mm-hmm.
And my boss in quality control was Lieutenant Colonel Hayes. Was the crustiest old F-100 pilot you'd ever want to meet. Got grounded and got into maintenance, and he used to chew on paper clips. He used to drive me nuts, man. The thought of chewing on a paper clip. But he used to chew on paper clips. But he kept bugging me about going to maintenance officer school, And so he told me, so did you apply? And I said, yeah, I called him and applied. So I want you to call him back and tell him that you can be there in 12 hours.
Okay. Go ahead.
You can be there in 12 hours. So I did. I called him up. Said, you know, if you have a cancellation, I can be there in 12 hours. A week didn't go by and they called me up and said, we got a class starting and we got a guy that had an automobile accident. If you can get here in 12 hours, we'll put you in this class. So, during this time, they also sent me, I got selected to go to IPAS, instructor pilot's instrument school at Randolph. And I went down there for, it's 3 weeks, I think it was 3 weeks or 4 weeks long, and went through the best, finest school I've ever been to anywhere. It was so fantastic. And another side story is that when I arrived down there, one of the first classes you take are written classes or classroom classes is instruments, and you take instruments apart. They tell you how they're built, and you learn how they work. Mm-hmm. And when I was a freshman, my CO was Bob Cates, and we had stolen his footlocker, which is tradition, and went through the whole bit of each day. He put us through more and more and more. Well, we arrived that morning for instrument school, and no professor. And the guys were kidding each other about how long do you wait for a Air Force captain? You wait for professor for 10 minutes and a full professor for 20 minutes, and then you walk out if they don't show up.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd been there about 15 minutes, and we called him the Stump because he was about 5'4" and pretty stout boy. But Bob Cates walked out on the stage and he goes, "Gentlemen, I'm gonna give you all a walk today. Everybody except Fish Happ." So he and I went and had coffee. And, that was a great experience. I really enjoyed instructor pilot school. When I came back, I had to teach instrument school for all the other pilots in the wing, as well as do the test hops.
Yeah.
But I liked flying with all the brand new co-pilots.
Right.
Because you do things with an airplane on test hops that you don't do on a regular basis, not even during training.
Right.
And I'm gonna tell you about when I got here in '93. They sent me to Austin to recruit because I was the PAS. That was my last assignment in the Air Force. And I went over to Austin. I was standing there in a tent, standing there with colonel's uniform on, my Class A's, and talking to high school students. And this guy tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Colonel," he said, are you a captain that was at Dice in 1973? I said, "Yeah." He said, "I just want you to know you scared the living crap out of me." And I said, "I didn't do it on purpose." And he said, "No." He said, "I was a brand new second lieutenant. I showed up at Dice, and they told me that my first flight was going to be with the QC or test top, and for me to report over there on Friday afternoon. And you briefed Friday afternoon, and you talked about shutting down all 4 engines, cranking the gear down, and stalling that 130. And he said, I went home that night and I didn't sleep a wink." And he said, "But I learned so much on that flight that I volunteered and flew with you 3 or 4 more times." And I said, "Well, I'm just really sorry I don't remember you." And he said, "Well, you probably wouldn't because I had braces and had my hair really short." And I said, "Well, I really apologize." He said, "Well, my name's Rick Perry and I'm the Secretary of Agriculture."
Oh my goodness gracious. How about that?
Yeah, small world. Then after he told me that he didn't have any hair and he had braces, I remembered who it was.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, when I was at IPIS, I going over to check my records because at Randolph's where military personnel center is, and I talked to the rated guys and I said, I don't want to go to rated supplement," which at that time they were taking all of the pilots out of the cockpit and they were putting them into missiles, they were putting them into maintenance, they were putting them anywhere they could put them to keep them in the Air Force to do something else than fly because they had too many pilots. Vietnam had shut, was obviously down the tubes. They had more pilots than they knew what to do with, and the reserves were full. They didn't have any room for them in the reserves. The airlines weren't hiring. And I told him, I said, whatever I got, I'll do anything to keep flying. And the guy said, "Well, the only thing that you can do is volunteer to be an exchange pilot." And I said, "Okay, where do I sign up?" So I filled out the paperwork and volunteered to go to Australia and Italy and Germany as a 130 exchange pilot. And I came back to Dice after IFAS and got selected for this maintenance school and went up to Chinook for maintenance school. And I was in class one day and the secretary came down from the office and said, "Captain Happ, there's a phone call from you from Randolph." So I went down to her office and answered the phone, and Major Walker, and he says, "Captain," he said, "I know you volunteered for Australia and Italy and Germany." He said, "Would you consider going to New Zealand?" I said, "Hell no, I don't want to go to New Zealand. It's colder than hell up there in Greenland." He goes, "No, not Zuiderland, New Zealand." I said, "Where in the hell is that?" And showing my ignorance, and he said, "Well, it's off the coast of Australia." I said, "Man, I don't know. I got to talk to my wife." He said, "Well, I got to know by in the morning." I said, "Well, I thought I had to go through interviews." And he said, "Well, I ain't supposed to tell you this, but if you'll take the assignment, you don't have to go for Washington for the interviews. They've already looked at your records and they've already accepted you." I said, wow. So I went home, got an encyclopedia, and looked up New Zealand. They had 3 million people since 1952, and they lose as many as they're born. And they got more sheep than they got people, and it's right off the coast of Australia. And so I talked to my wife, and she said, well, why not? Let's do it. Keeps you flying. So I called them back and said, okay, I'll go to New Zealand. Probably the greatest 2 years of my life. It was just absolutely tremendous.
Beautiful place.
So I was never there.
Right.
I flew 1,900 hours, 1,100 hours in 19 months.
Is that right?
I flew my butt off.
Wow.
But the Kiwis had 5 airplanes.
Yeah.
My very first week there, actually the first day in the squadron, I walked in and the ops officer had just returned from Little Rock as the exchange pilot the year that he was the exchange pilot for the 2 years before. And they had selected another pilot that went to Little Rock in his place. And then I came to New Zealand to replace the guy that was in New Zealand while he was over in Little Rock. And his name was John Handy. And Kerry Adamson was the Kiwi's name. And so after we finished, every morning they have ops brief at 8 o'clock. Every morning. And then everybody goes into the flight lounge and drinks coffee, and if they're scheduled to fly, they go fly. And Kerry says, did you bring your helmet? I said, yeah. And a flight suit? I said, yeah. And he said, good. He said, I want you to take Scotty out and give him some some approaches and landings before his check ride. And I go, don't I get a check ride? He said, didn't you get one before you left Dodge? Yeah. He said, am I going to get a local area orientation? He said, well, Scotty will give it to you. And that's just the way they did things. So he did walk me over the hangar, and he said, just to get the airplane, you sign the auth book. And whichever book's on the table, the airplane's OR, ready to go, just sign for it and take it. Mm-hmm. And so I did, and I went out, and here I got a student that's giving me a local area orientation. Mm-hmm. There weren't any other airplanes in the sky. I mean, we were the only ones there in the whole North Island. The radios were dead. I was so unused to flying with no radios going in your ear.
Yeah.
And so that was tremendous, tremendous flying. I think I went to every island in the South Pacific.
Wow.
I went to Rarotonga, Tonga, went to Honiara, landed at Johnson Island, Honiara, and flew up Guadalcanal, took a helicopter and some doctors into they'd had a hell of an earthquake, and they had no electricity, everything was blacked out, and all I had to land was in 2 Jeeps at the end of the runway, and came in, landed on the runway, made a low pass first, and then came around and landed in pitch dark. I mean, just blacked out. And next morning when we got up and went out to the airplane, right at the end of the runway were these big palm trees. And I have no idea how I missed those palm trees, because I never saw them. And I came in really low because that wasn't that long of a runway. So, yeah. I mean, again, the good Lord was just really good to me, because I could have hit those trees just as easy as pie, but I never saw them. It was pitch dark. Yeah. They never said anything to me about trees being at the end of the palm trees being at the end of the runway. But probably the greatest experience is I have 27 trips to Antarctica.
Is that right?
In the non-ski airplane, wheeled airplane.
It's a
one-way trip on a C-130. You take off. They call you to alert you. The Kiwis do. You fly to Christchurch, and they call you to alert you for your flight. And the time they call the AC and alert him, they give him the weather at McMurdo or at Scott Base. Then 30 minutes later, they pick you up in the bus. They give you weather again, and you keep tabs. There is no forecasted weather in Antarctica. It's all trends. Mm-hmm. And it's 7 knots of wind. It can be beautiful, sunny, and just absolutely gorgeous, but at 7 knots of wind, you get partial obscuration. You know, the whole south Pole in Antarctica is not snow. People think it's ice crystals, and they're real fine. It's like picking up sand almost. And at 7 knots of wind, you get partial obscuration. At 9 knots of wind, you get obscuration. At 11 knots, it's a total whiteout.
Yeah.
And it's only about 18 to 20 feet deep. But you can't see 3-4 feet maximum if the sun's out because of the reflection. And so you do these trends, and before you get the SRP, safe return point, you have to make a decision. First time it went 5 knots when they called me, then it went to 7 knots, then it went to 9 knots, then back to 7 knots, and then it went back to 9 knots. And I said, guys, we're turning around and going back, and we were almost at safe return point. And we turned around, went back, and it dropped to 3 knots. And of course, you fly out. It's about a 7.5 hour flight. But if you fly out 4 of that, where you hit safe return point, and then turn around, it's 5 back, depending on the winds.
Right.
So you end up flying 9 hours, and you didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But I turned around twice. First time I turned around, the weather got really good. The second time I turned around, it was like 5, 5, 7, 7, 9, 7, and I said, guys, I'm not going. Oh, you know what happened last time? Well, we need to go down there. Well, the minute we turned around, we were about 10 minutes headed back, went to 11 knots, and stayed that way for 7 days.
Good decision.
Because the only option you have, and what they told us to do, is you leave the gear up and you belly it in on the ice shelf, and then they'll tow you back to the runway and put new engines on it and jack it up and put the gear down and then fly it back.
Yeah.
That's all they can do. And while I was down there on exchange, the French dug a Navy airplane out of the ice. It was 38 feet down in the ice.
Wow.
And your first trip down there, you have to go through ice survival. It's a 3-day where they take you out, and actually my first trip down there was on a 141. We flew down in the back of 141, the whole crew, and then we went on ice survival. And they teach you how to make an ice hut, which is really amazing. You stick your ice axe in the ice, and then you step off 10 paces in 4 directions. Then you walk that circle about 10 feet or 20 feet roughly in diameter. Then the 3 of you get outside that circle and you start pitching ice into the center of the circle until you make a mound. Then you take your ice axe and go 3 feet away, which is 2 lengths of that 18-inch ice axe. And you dig down 3 feet, shovel it out, and then you dig underneath and you measure till you know you're inside the dome. Then you dig up the same height you dug down 3 feet, and then you start scooping the ice out. And when we finally got it leveled out and got our rubber mats down, they had these little foam mats, and then you got in their sleeping bag. We lit a candle in there, so it's daylight, and you get a little light diffusion through the ice even, but not a whole lot. So we lit a candle, and I guess we were in there about 2 hours, and I woke up and I had to get out of my sleeping bag and started taking some of my parkas off, and it got so hot in there, and you had to punch holes in the ice to get air in there so you could breathe, because you burn up all the oxygen.
Yeah.
Well, the next morning when you wake up, you go outside, you can walk across the dome and stand and jump up and down on top of it, because the moisture, or not moisture, but the heat from your body and that candle and everything, it solidifies that ice and makes the most beautiful dome.
Oh, yeah.
And then my last I had to take the Aussies through ice survival, and so I actually went through it twice. But the last trip out of there, my navigator says, "Why don't we fly over where we went through ice survival?" And I said, "Do you think you can find it?" He said, "Oh yeah, I know exactly where it is." And so we flew over, and it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. There were these most beautiful, perfectly cylindrical circles down into the ice. It looked like silos, right where we had camped. And what happens is when the sun beats down on that igloo, if you want to call it that, it heats up inside enough that it sinks down into the ice until it gets below where the sun no longer can hit the top of that dome. It's like a magnifying glass. So that's why it got so warm in there. It wasn't a candle as much as it was the radiated heat from that sun on the inside. But that after we got back from ice survival, they teach you to take 3-minute showers. All the water there is recirculated. Wastewater is all converted back to where water's so scarce down there. They bring in water every year on a ship during the summer and replenish their stock, but they recycle that water. So you're taking showers with replenished sewer water, basically. But the club, you ate in this big, huge building, slept in this big, huge building that was probably 12 to 14 inches thick, concrete block building at McMurdo. And then the runway was about 3 miles out on the ice. And it had to have 116 inches of ice in order to land out there. And so you literally landed on the ice. In the second year I went down, the ice runway had actually floated back in, but it was about 4 miles out. And all they did was go out and regrade it, and they didn't have to build a new runway. It was still over 116 inches thick. And but that first night back after ice survival, we all went to the club and went down there and had supper and went down to the club, and the Kiwis drank beer. That's where I started gaining weight. I mean, they drank beer. Wednesday afternoon, I learned to fly Wednesday afternoon because that was athletic afternoon. The only exercise they got was with their right elbow drinking beer in a pub. But they start drinking when they're 12 years old. I mean, they have a tolerance for beer that's just incredible. They drink it their whole life. But we started to go to bed after survival, and one of the guys says, "Hey, we're going to put on a movie and pop some popcorn, and why don't you guys hang around and watch the movie?" And I'll never forget it. It was WD and Dixieland Dancers with what's his name? Burt Reynolds. Oh. I laughed so hard my sides hurt. That was one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. And so, anyways, we decided time to go. We've been drinking beer all night and eating popcorn and watching movies, and weirdest sensation of my whole life. The club was in a Quonset hut down below ground, like a mole hole, and you had to go down these tubes to get, these walkways to get to it. Walked up that walkway, and I opened that door at 2:30 in the morning, and I thought I was going to bleed to death. I'd never experienced that bright of a sun at 2:30 in the morning after drinking all night. I was expecting it to be pitch dark, and oh man, I was blinding me. But that next morning we had 11 knots of wind, and I learned what a whiteout was really like. And it was funny because I had asked the guys, "What are all these ropes for?" And they said, "No, you'll find out." Well, that next morning I found out you can't go anywhere unless you walk that rope, because you can be 3 feet from the building and not see it.
And be lost.
And be lost. And they've lost guys down there that less than 30 feet from the building, they couldn't find their way to the building. And you can scream at the top of your lungs, but your sound it's absorbed by all that ice crystals, and nobody can hear you. and they don't hear sirens, they don't hear anything.
Yeah.
And so that was.
Because you take off in more. You could take off in less visibility than you could land.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But they have GCA controllers down there, and what you attempt to do is you attempt to fly a ground control approach from the Navy controllers, but they're not that proficient. They're not that good. But
Right.
they would prefer, if you've got to belly it in, to go up on the ice shelf where hopefully you find a nice, pretty smooth spot and that's visual, so you can see to belly it in. But that was a unique experience. It's the most awesome place I've ever been in my whole life. You start about an hour out sinking the airplane, which means you start putting clothes on and bringing the temperature down so that when you land, you don't have any moisture that instantaneously will turn into ice.
Yeah.
Because it'd be minus 40 degrees down there and you wouldn't know it, especially if the sun's out and it's still.
Right.
But it's still cold, but
Right.
you don't feel cold. The sun radiates you. And I've worked around the airplane in minus 40 degree temperature and not realizing that if you touch metal, you'll stick to it. But just walking around the airplane wasn't that cold. I mean, there was no wind to be cold. 90% of the time during the summer, the weather's pretty good down there. As far as, but there's no night, no day. Well,
I gotta get, but you've given me so much here to do this show. I mean, the show's only a 30-minute show, so the challenge here is to hit the high spots and all of that. Do you have any? Do you have 2 or 3 pictures of any kind of you either at A&M or from Vietnam or anything like that? Just.
Are you tall enough to reach that?
Yeah, sure am. Which one?
That's the only picture I have of me of A&M. The dog chewed it up.
That's a good picture. Can I borrow this and scan it?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just give it back to you on Thursday. Is Thursday going to be okay for you to?
What time?
2:30 is when we normally do it. Tell me what time is good for you.
Well, they're having that St. Joe dedication at 2.
Okay. Okay. We can go.
We can do it before or slightly after.
Okay. Let me get with Kyle and find out exactly when we can.
I mean, I
do
don't
it
have to
another
go
time.
like that. But
I don't want
we
you
could do it at 2:30. I just wanted to stop by and say hi.
Well, maybe we could do it at 3, or maybe we could do it before, something like that. I'll call you and let you know.
Can you reach those folks?
Yeah, sure.
Well,
all of them, or?
No, just the round ones.
Oh, these here?
No. Yeah.
Just one of these?
Yeah. You're gonna have to tilt it. Don't hit that plate. Let's bring this down. We couldn't afford to call our folks when we were in New Zealand, so what we did was we put these called the New Zealand Lights, and we put these together and sent this to our folks.
Oh my goodness.
And the one I wanted to show you was, I don't know if it's this one or not. Can't remember. This is a car I took down there and sold it a week after I got there.
Yeah.
For $11,000 and bought this one brand new and sold it with 1,500 kilometers, not miles, but 1,500. That's what we bought our second house with. This is how I heated my house. Lived in 800 square feet. Yeah, this is, get another look at that. I was going to show you. Here's the cabin that Carol and I lived in.
Oh, that's that.
We had 6 months. So
Yeah.
My tail off. This is it.
Okay.
This is that's McMurdo. Well, I didn't even get into when I got back from New Zealand and went to safety school and did accident investigations. Then went to Armed Forces Staff College, then went to MPC, and they had an experiment there. I was the only rated guy in the sending rated guys to these different assignments.
Mm-hmm. This is all in New Zealand?
Yeah. Yeah. It's places I went to, and of course Sydney and a lot of the islands, and even went to, I got 2 trips to, took Surrey and Hillary to Kathmandu.
Yeah.
That's an interesting approach.
Wow, this is great.
I didn't realize some of those pictures were starting to fade very bad.
Yeah. You got any pictures from when you were in Vietnam?
I did not take a picture when I was in Vietnam.
Okay. Yeah, we got so much to talk about, I don't need many pictures. Matter of fact, if I just had this A&M picture, that would be good. You don't have like an official military picture, do you? For an Air Force picture? Or?
This one.
Oh yeah, there you are.
Is that too dark?
No, I'll scan that one too.
Well, I wish I could find the flight book. If you'd like to look at those, you're more than welcome to look at them. I just like to save them for my son.
Yeah.
I can't believe I can't find my flight book because I thought it was in here. My wife's got one picture of me in pilot training, but I don't know what she do with it. Is this a? Well, this is the last picture I had taken.
Yeah, that's great. Like I said, the pictures are not the big deal. I can just take these two, the one at A&M and the one in your Air Force photograph, because we've got.
Well, I wish you could see the one in my office. It's a really cute picture.
Well, is that you talking about the one of the airplane with the?
No, there's one of me in a campaign hat.
Yeah.
And my wife is standing there holding the camera, and I got this picture, and I got this look on my face like, you know, what a dumb picture.
When was this taken?
When I was a senior at A&M.
Okay. Well, I mean, is it a small thing that you could bring with you on Thursday?
Yeah, I can
bring it with you, and we'll shoot it there. You know, and I'll take these and scan them.
Okay.
And then I'll give these back to you on Thursday.
Don't lose that one. That's the only one I got.
No, I won't lose anything. I promise I won't lose nothing.
Thank you, John Happ, and thank you for your magnificent service to our country and still your service to our community as a very, very busy volunteer. Good friend, John Happ. Tune in again next time for the next edition, next week, of Brazos Valley Voices. I'm Tom Turbeville.